Well, good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your Wednesday with us. We're going to begin this morning with President Trump's historic state visit to China. Mr. Trump is expected to arrive in Beijing within the hour. He left Washington yesterday for this first state visit to China in nearly a decade. The last one came during his first term in office. To highlight the economic importance of the trip, a group of CEOs of major American companies will also be part of the U.S. delegation in Beijing.
President Trump will meet this week with Chinese President Xi Jinping for a highly anticipated two-day summit. This trip was originally scheduled for April, but was postponed because of the war with Iran. That conflict and how it impacts China expected to be a central topic of discussion at the summit. Before leaving for Beijing, President Trump discussed the Chinese president's response so far to the war.
Well, I think, number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problem. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine.
NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now live from Beijing as the summit gets underway. Janice, good morning. We know this trip is all about substance, but there will also be some pomp and circumstance, too. So set the stage for us. Walk us through the type of diplomatic reception the Chinese president is preparing for the American president once he touches down.
Joe, this is being seen as an historic trip at a critical time with the war against Iran, China's allies, still unresolved. The two-day visit will include face-to-face meetings, a ceremony at the Great Hall of the People, a tour of the Temple of Heaven, a state banquet. These are all special measures that aren't extended to all visiting heads of state. But there's unlikely to be any grand deal or reset announced at the end of it. Rather, this is going to be about shoring up stability in the U.S.-China relationship and to look for the economic benefits that can come from that. It's a different China that President Trump is visiting, a more confident China since his last trip in 2017, which was billed as a state visit plus. But since then, there's been a trade war, the pandemic, volatility, another trade war. Xi Jinping and Chinese officials feel like they know President Trump better this time. They know the kind of diplomacy that he favors, which happens to be a page out of the Chinese playbook, and also that he's less hawkish on China than his first term. So Beijing will be looking to lean into all of that. Joe?
Janice, as we mentioned, this group of CEOs from these big companies here in America, they're going to be part of this trip. It includes Elon Musk, of course, of Tesla and SpaceX, also Apple's Tim Cook. What do we know about the role that they're going to play on this trip?
Well, it is quite a list of leading American CEOs and companies. You mentioned Elon Musk and Tim Cook. Well, when Air Force One was refueling in Alaska, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA was there to join the trip. The company confirmed that he was invited by President Trump. So we have more than a dozen CEOs, but the delegation isn't looking so much for deals. The trip is about gaining access and influence in the Chinese market. Restrictions and export controls will be one of the main issues that the U.S. side is going to be pressing Chinese officials on, in particular around magnets and other rare earths and critical minerals. But this strong American showing is an important feature of this summit and this visit, given the growing animosity between the two countries when it comes to tech and artificial intelligence.
And Janice, I mean, beyond the war in Iran, we expect them to discuss the future of Taiwan, of course, trade, as you've been discussing here. You said no grand deals expected. So what are the big expectations for any sort of results or agreements to come out of this?
Well, Beijing will want to talk about Taiwan. It's the most sensitive issue between the two countries. Even small changes in language or tone can have major consequences, like saying U.S. weapons sales to Taiwan are a flashpoint for China. And Xi Jinping is expected to urge President Trump to either delay or even scale back arms deals. That President Trump has suggested he would discuss these deals with the Chinese leader is also raising questions about the extent of U.S. support for Taiwan. And this has some people in Taipei worried that the U.S. may not have its back. Remember, Beijing regards Taiwan as a domestic issue. The island is self-governed. They see it as their own territory. This is the core of its core interests at this summit. Beyond the political points that they'll be discussing, we're likely to see some agreements announced, some deliverables, as they like to call it, where China agrees to buy more from the United States when it comes to things like Boeing aircraft and soybeans from American farmers. Joe and Savannah.
Janice in Beijing. Janice, thank you so much.
Well, despite the ongoing standoff over a peace deal with Iran, President Trump says he doesn't think he'll need any help from Beijing with reaching an agreement with Tehran.
Yeah, the U.S. and Iran have struggled to come to any kind of arrangement that would also lead to the reopening of that critical Strait of Hormuz. The president called Iran's latest counterproposal garbage, and that impasse is keeping oil prices elevated.
Here with more is NBC News International correspondent Matt Bradley. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Matt, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So where do things stand right now with Iran and specifically with the Strait of Hormuz after the president dismissed this counterproposal from Tehran? Do we think the ceasefire is in danger of collapsing?
Well, I mean, after President Trump dismissed this counterproposal, that was actually a couple of days ago, and it looks as though the ceasefire is intact. So the ceasefire survived Trump's reaction, which, as you mentioned, was pretty harsh, but it also survived several breakouts of violence over the past week or two. And surviving that violence means that the ceasefire is probably going to stand. That was the hardest test that it's had so far. What we're in right now looks almost like a holding pattern. I mean, we can't say what's going to happen. I try not to make predictions, especially for stuff like this. But look, this could persist for quite a while, particularly while Trump remains distracted by the events in China and his huge, much anticipated trip. Right now, we're still waiting to hear back on whether or not there's going to be negotiations, how to bridge the gaps. But it does look, unfortunately, for those who are relying on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, like the status quo could endure.
Matt, closer to where you are, the situation in Lebanon is also important. Iran is insisting that Lebanon be included in any peace deal. Despite a ceasefire, though, with Hezbollah, Israel has been intensifying its attacks. So what is the latest there, and what are we hearing from Lebanese authorities?
That's right. And one of the big, most vexing issues, and something that we've been looking into recently, are these fiber optic guided drones. These are basically toys you can order off the internet for a few $100. They fly over the battlefield, and they're not guided by Wi-Fi or by radio waves. That means that Hezbollah can send them right up to Israeli positions, and the Israelis won't be able to detect them because they're literally just dragging a cord along the battlefield. So this has become a major issue for the Israelis. We've seen multiple soldiers who have been killed and wounded because of these devices. And it's one of the things that the IDF tells me has been a real headache for the Ministry of Defense here, trying to figure out what to do. They're trying to look for a high-tech solution to a very low-tech problem. Now, that is continuing the fighting and fueling it in Lebanon. But that fighting in Lebanon, which, according to Israeli officials, really just is a ceasefire in name only. It's almost a full-scale war. That could also risk, as we've seen in the past, the broader ceasefire between Israel and the U.S. on one side and Iran on the other. The Iranians had made a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah contingent upon their broader negotiations. We'll see if they want to do that again.
Matt, also more developments from on the ground there. There's this surge in violence from Israeli settlers and the IDF against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. And we have this new report from UNICEF. It's about that and how it's been impacting children. What have they found?
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem that we've been watching, we've been seeing for several years now. It has gotten so much worse since the October 7th attacks. But even before that, the nomination, the appointment by Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, of several prominent right-wing figures to security positions has led to a deterioration in violence and in control over violence in the West Bank on the part of these settlers. We heard from the head of UNICEF speaking, or one of the top officials of UNICEF speaking about this report. Here's what was said.
Between January 2025 and today, at least one Palestinian child has been killed on average every single week in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. So that's 70 Palestinian children killed in this time frame. Now, 93% of those were killed by Israeli forces. March 2026 saw the highest number of Palestinians injured by settler attacks in the last 20 years. And we're seeing attacks become increasingly coordinated.
And now, what we're seeing here, this is a problem that the U.S. has actually been pressuring the Israelis to try to control. But so far, it looks like it's getting worse before it's going to get any better. guys.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you so much.
Gas prices and inflation here at home might be spiking, but President Trump said yesterday he's not thinking about that when it comes to seeking an end to the war.
Yeah, I was talking to reporters yesterday before he left for China, and he was asked whether the financial strain Americans are feeling is motivating him to make a deal with Tehran. Here's some of what he said.
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
For more, let's bring in NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach. Gary, good morning. So higher prices for fuel and just about everything else are a drag, we know right now, on the president's approval rating. So what are many of his fellow Republicans, some of whom face re-election in just under 6 months, saying about these headline-making comments that the president isn't thinking about those financial struggles?
Yeah, many of them are doing the same thing they often do when there's something that's said that is wildly unpopular or that they just don't agree with. They blame the media and they say they didn't see the post or they didn't see the comment. There's widespread belief and understanding that Trump can't actually run for a third term. The Constitution does explicitly forbid that, but Republicans nonetheless do love to stir the pot on that topic, guys.
Gary, I want to turn to Capitol Hill now. There was this heated exchange, we played a little bit of this earlier, between FBI Director Kash Patel and Maryland Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen yesterday. It's getting a lot of attention this morning. This was during a budget hearing before the Senate Appropriations Committee. The senator raised concerns about this report. Our viewers might remember from The Atlantic. It came out last month and detailed these alleged episodes of excessive drinking by Patel and unexplained absences. Patel's denied all this. Walk us through this. Give us some context.
Yeah, let's walk through this and fact-check this line by line here. According to reporting from Sarah Fitzpatrick at The Atlantic, members of Kash Patel's security detail did at one point in a hotel room try to use breaching equipment to get into his hotel room because they could not wake the FBI director up. On the margarita thing, he's referencing Kilmar Abreu Garcia, the guy that was deported wrongly from the U.S. and sent to CICOT in El Salvador. There was that famous photo that you guys may remember of him sitting down at a table with margaritas. The margaritas were widely seen as being placed there by the El Salvadoran government. And then that also, Kilmar Abreu Garcia is not charged with rape or charged with gangbanging. He is charged with human smuggling in Tennessee, and he has pled not guilty to those charges. And then on the lobby bar, that $7,000 charge, that was apparently a campaign expense from the Van Hollen team for a holiday party, guys.
All right, Gary, before we let you go, another Trump administration official is resigning. Dr. Marty Makary stepped down as commissioner of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, yesterday. Do we know why and who might replace him?
Yeah, Dr. Marty Makary out as FDA commissioner after a resignation letter sent to the president over text message, apparently because of two different things that he didn't agree with that happened under his watch. One having to do with the FDA authorization of fruit-flavored vapes. He thought that was not the right thing to do, and they did that anyway. He was upset by that. The other issue had to related to the administration pressuring him to put more tighter restrictions on mifepristone, the abortion drug. That's not something he wanted to do, and so he ended up resigning. Who's taking his spot? A guy named Kyle Diamantis, a lawyer who does not hold a medical degree. Guys.
All right, Gary, coming out of Washington this morning. Thank you.
Well, there are growing concerns this morning over that deadly hantavirus outbreak.
The World Health Organization now says there are 11 reported cases of the virus. 9 are confirmed, 2 are suspected. It's also warning that these numbers could increase in the next few weeks.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us from London. He has been closely following this for us. Raf, good morning. So first, just bring us up to speed on these latest confirmed cases. The number's gone up a bit.
Guys, good morning. Yeah, so the World Health Organization now saying there are 9 confirmed cases. One of them, of course, is that American citizen who was on the cruise ship, is now in isolation in Nebraska, and whom authorities say tested mildly positive, so just over the threshold for a positive test there. They say that person is not showing any symptoms, nor is anybody else in that facility in Nebraska. It is, guys, a different story in France, where there is a woman who has been in intensive care for several days now, and she is in, according to French authorities, a very serious condition. She is now breathing with the help of an automated lung that's trying to take some of the pressure off of her own lung. So it is looking pretty serious over there in France. And of course, 3 people have died as a result of this outbreak so far.
And Ralph, we also have a Dutch hospital which has quarantined several staff members who are working with a hantavirus patient. What happened there?
Yeah, so 12 staff members at this hospital are now in quarantine. They're going to go into quarantine for 6 weeks. And the situation there, they have one confirmed hantavirus case at their hospital. They have pretty strict protocols in place as they deal with that patient. Authorities at that hospital are saying that while strict protocols were followed, not the absolute most serious, which are needed in this case. So there was some mishandling, it sounds like, of blood work. So authorities in the Netherlands are saying that they believe the chance any of these medics actually contracted the virus is very, very small. But out of an abundance of caution, they are asking them now to go into quarantine.
Ralph, I think that whole concept of abundance of caution, there's a lot of questions about it here at home and what quarantine looks like here in the U.S. at least. 16 states are warning of possible exposures to the virus. As our viewers might remember, a lot of people had disembarked from this ship and gone back to these states before this situation was fully realized. And now there's these questions over what does a 42-day quarantine look like here? Is it isolation? Are they at home? Walk us through what Americans should know about what's happening here.
Yes, let's break this down. 18 Americans are back home now who are actually on that cruise ship. 16 of them are in Nebraska. 2 of them are in Georgia. In Georgia, you do have one person who is showing mild symptoms. Now, at this point, everybody is remaining in those 2 isolation facilities. But at some point, in the coming days, potentially, people who have been testing negative, who aren't showing any symptoms, are going to be allowed to go home. Now, they're not just running wild when they go home. They're being asked to stay at home. They're being asked to coordinate with local and state health authorities. But understandably, this is potentially concerning for people if you know that someone who is on that ship is coming back to your community. So this is something that we're going to be monitoring across the country for a couple of weeks now.
Ralph, clearly lots of questions about the people on the ship, but also questions about the ship itself. So what's next for that ship?
Ship is en route to the Netherlands. It's expected to get there on Sunday. It's going to dock at the port of Rotterdam. Rotterdam is a port with a lot of experience dealing with ships where there have been outbreaks. There was a neurovirus outbreak on a cruise ship a couple of years ago. It went into the port of Rotterdam. And guys, as you can imagine, it is going to get the deepest of deep cleans. There is going to be a lot of disinfecting. And you have 25 crew members who are still aboard the ship sailing it home. And they will, of course, go into their own medical procedures once they arrive back in the Netherlands. Guys.
All right, Ralph Sanchez covering a lot for us. Thank you so much. We have got some good news in the forecast this morning. Imagine that. We kicked off the week with frost and freeze, but now it's about to warm up.
Angie Lastman's here with the good news forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Yes, the east, of course, has been running cooler than normal over the past couple of days. We're going to see that change, but meanwhile, the west still boiling. We've got potential records on deck through the day today, and you can see some of these locations taking a run at the 90s. We've got Salt Lake City expected to hit 90 degrees. Grand Junction, 93, will potentially tie at least a record in Denver today with a high of 90. That heat, of course, causing some problems when it comes to fire conditions. We've got these fire alerts that are up and down parts of the west, stretching across the plains and the Rockies and down across parts of the southwest. And again, we've got the heat in place and we've got the other ingredients as well. We've got a critical risk specifically across parts of the northern Rockies that I want folks to watch for through the day today. Some really strong winds and that low humidity, along with, of course, those really warm temperatures. All the ingredients are there, not to mention we've got these dry thunderstorms that can have lightning with them, and that, of course, just the spark that we need to start those fires, which can, of course, rapidly spread with those ingredients. Meanwhile, we've got this next round of rain kind of working across parts of the Northeast and into the Mid-Atlantic and across the Appalachians today. This is going to leave us with some wet weather through the day today. The farther north you are into New England, you'll likely see that, but anywhere across New York or Pennsylvania, you'll likely see some unsettled weather today, and a couple of those stronger storms anywhere from Virginia to New York. So having the umbrella with you is going to be a good idea today. That rain, as we get into tomorrow, still sticks around across New England. The good news is we need it. It's going to be beneficial rain across this region, especially this time of year, but we will see cooler and breezier conditions kind of settle in, at least for tomorrow, for parts of the Northeast. Meanwhile, as we look to this afternoon and evening, we've got the chance for some of those thunderstorms to fire up across parts of the northern Rockies, the wind gusts, the hail, even the tornadoes on the table across parts of this region. So heads up for folks there. And then we'll see kind of another round of that, but a much smaller area tomorrow as we look across parts of the plains, Wichita, Salina, Kansas, all included in that here for this afternoon and evening, guys. And we'll pick up maybe an inch or two here by the time we get through Friday across parts of New England. That, of course, as I mentioned, beneficial rain that we need.
There you go. We need the rain.
We need the rain.
And we need the sun.
Exactly. On it.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.